Hello to the chicos and the chicas. Today on the menu is going to be a bit of a discussion about bad bishops. And the reason why I thought it was timely to put this not so marvelous piece on the menu is because recently I have had a number of chess lessons where students brought up the issue of, you know, every now and then pointing out that XYZ had a bad bishop in this position, or can we play against the bad bishop, yada yada yada. And I noticed that at least half of the times when the concept of a bad bishop came up, or playing against a particular bishop which was supposedly bad, it actually wasn't the case. And that made it clear to me that many club level players actually struggle to properly identify and determine what it is really that makes a bishop bad. And so I'm going to start with an example that definitely should make it abundantly clear what bad bishops are all about. This is a textbook bad French bishop. Now, why is it so bad? It is because it's completely entombed and locked behind its own pawns, so it cannot fire freely. And here I'm going to tell you the most important concept that we must think about or consider or always reflect on when looking at pawns that are locking in bishops. Are the pawns fixed? This is the key concept. That if a pawn is blocking a bishop, that means absolutely nothing at all as far as whether that bishop is good or bad. Nothing, nada whatsoever. The key word there is that the pawns are blocking the bishop and the pawns are fixed. So you see here, I have got 4 pawns fixed on white. There are an additional 2 on white. Neither, well, you could argue whether g6 is fixed or not. Black could still technically play for h6, g5, but we can see very clearly that it's very, very difficult to accomplish. Thus, we have got an absolutely miserable bishop on the board and a totally and utterly hopelessly dead lost position. I might revisit actually this position in a later video, but for the time being I would like to leave this as an exercise for the reader to try to come up with various strategies of how to convert this position into a win despite material balance. Now, the number one factor that club level players often forget when they try to home in on the bad bishop scenario is that usually bad bishop scenarios don't occur in its most perfect form, which is what I just showed you then when it was only a knight versus an awful bishop. Usually we have a board full of pieces and we can single out a bad piece and then design a strategy around trading everything else off. However, and this is very important that we are mindful of this, purely a bad bishop should never be a sole reason why we evaluate a position good or bad. Here, for example, black has got, the worst bishop in the history of the game, and yet black is on the verge of winning. And the reason for that is because, yeah, the bishop is miserable, but the rooks are awesome. And white's rooks are absolutely garbo, and the knight is not exactly anything to write home about. If it were on d3, we would be talking about a different story. And so this is precisely what I am arguing for, and that is that you have to look at the complexity of the position, evaluate it as a whole. Don't try to single out one feature, oh, this is a bad bishop, so I'm gonna win, and then be rudely shocked when it turns out that actually, nah, because we are not going to be able to tame the black rooks, and 2 rooks are a lot more mighty than a lazy knight that may or may not make it to c5, but by the time it does, the rooks will be here and here. So with black to move, we are clearly in a world of hurt, but even if I play a pass and make it white to move, black is still better here, despite the absolutely atrocious bishop. Now, I'm going to show you an example of a position that came up in a lesson between me and student, where we encountered a very cool position. Alekhine with black, I think either against Tarash or Bogulyubov, one or the other, I can't remember now. And it is, by the way, from the new Woodpecker book. Black to move, and student admittedly struggled to find the correct move here, which is h5, immediately kicking the knight out and putting pressure on e4. And one of the candidate moves that he came up with was c4. And when I asked him what motivated to play for c4, the response was to kill the bishop. Now this bishop is dead. And then I immediately clicked like, oh boy, is this a really bad take? Because, or rather, let me take that back. Is this a very instructive take? Because in my opinion, c4 actually strengthens this bishop rather than, making it useless. Why is that? I tell you why. So what is our number one rule about bad bishops? The pawns, number of pawns fixed on its color. So if we look at the dark squared bishop now, how many pawns does it have fixed on its color? 1. That is already a very, very suspicious sign that we are not evaluating this correctly. Additionally to that, and it is very, very important that we understand this, the central white pawn mass is fluid. They can freely progress. And so, if we just play a couple of white moves out, just so that I can demonstrate a point, now the bishop is free to go back to c1, and after f5 or e5, f5, the white attack is going to break through like mad, and very likely this bishop is actually going to be the star piece of the attack, no less. And the reason why it could do that is because we released the tension on d4. If instead we do something like, let's say, kick, 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 let's say castles and put a rook on d8, I just mumbo-jumboed a few moves, but it's semi-decent. This bishop can never abandon its post because it's glued to the defense of the d4 pawn. Right? So now I can never regroup with bishop c1, f5 and then go to f4 because I have a duty to fulfill, which is the defense of the d4 pawn. And so the paradox here is that c4 quite likely strengthens the b2 bishop in the mid to long term, but it's not like we can do anything about it. And so as such, this is heavily to be avoided. When would it be okay? Check out this scenario. I'm just going to play a few mumbo jumbo moves again. And we get into a very famous structure. Oh, was it Grigorich Smyslov? It was someone Smyslov. I think Grigorich Smyslov. If you play c4 now, let's talk about the bishop again. How many pawns fixed on its color? 4. 4. Not 1, 4. The entire pawn mass is rigid. It cannot move. It's blockadable. And as a result of that, this bishop is red hot garbage. Right? So to understand this nuance, I don't know if it's a nuance, rather a concept, you really always have to approach bad bishop from the perspective of, are the pawns fluid or not? And after you see this, you will agree with me that it's ridiculous to rule bishops is bad because they are blocked behind pawns, right? We are looking at one of the biggest main lines of the Scheveningen, and at first glance, we could conclude that the pawns, both the black bishops are really, really awful because they are shooting at the back of pawns. But we already know that this is a very sloppy evaluation that doesn't take into account the fact that the pawns are fluid. So once again, let's play out a couple of moves and be surprised when we realize that actually, hang on a tick, oh gee, both bishops are perfect. No problems. And I do know that here Queen G3 is a very good move for white. So to make it a little bit better from white's perspective, I'm going to play A4 and then take, E5, take. Because now Queen G3 can be met with bishop C5. Forcing a trade. And then, yeah, it is a reasonable position for black. We just need to dodge the bullet and the bishop can come out to E6. And it's totally fine. So once again, we have got fluid pawns. We do not talk about bad bishops. That concept doesn't enter your thought process or, the fray at all. Bad bishops we talk about when the pawns are fixed. They cannot move. They cannot break out. So be sure that you don't listen to the siren song of temptation when you see a bishop that has one pawn in front of it, and then you go like, whoa, okay, we have a strategy. No, probably you do not. You need to look more deeply, and you need a lot more information about that position, not only singling out that bishop, like here the b2-1, to, you know, push in for c4. No bueno. That's not how it works. So that's gonna be it for me now, guys. I hope that this was a helpful one. I did notice once again that many club level players tend to misevaluate and misjudge these types of positions and questions in general about bad or good bishops. So hopefully this was a good way to clear up a bit of the fog. Thank you very much for joining me for this one. Please don't forget to smash that like button with a vicious aggression. Subscribe if you haven't done so. You can super thank me if you can afford it, or if you would like to. And I'll be back with the next video soon. Thanks for watching.